Build your better breakfast at Subway with the tasty 250 combo, a 16-ounce cup of freshly brewed Seattle's best coffee, and any delicious egg muffin melt. And don't hit the snooze on this deal. Right now, come in before 11 a.m. for a $5 footlong breakfast sub. Subway, eat fresh. The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't
The
care.
BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the Sports Guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Another gloomy day here in Southern California. We're in a gloom wave. But you know what? That's not going to stop me from being excited about my favorite podcast of the year. We did this 2 years ago. People liked it. We did well on it. I thought we'd dispense some valuable advice. Last year, the schedules did not work out. We didn't do it. America was outraged. Emails, phone calls, people just couldn't believe we didn't do it. I'm exaggerating a little. But on the Subway Fresh Tech hotline right now to do NBA OverUnders for the 2010-2011 season. Our NBA expert, Joe House. What's happening?
What's happening?
We're very excited about this. In fact, we didn't even want to rush this. We wanted it. It's almost like baking a souffle. You got to study it, look at it from every angle, and do it when it's ready and when it's right. It's ready. It's right. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, the league changed so much this off season. I needed all that time to research to figure out who was on what team.
When we did this 2 years ago, we actually did really well. Now, you have the stats, but if I remember correctly, we had 6 locks that we agreed on, and we went 4-2 on those locks. What were the other numbers?
We agreed on 15 teams, in terms of the over or the under.
Yeah.
And of those 15, we called them agreeances.
Yep.
I think in honor of
Fred Durst.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
We went 10-5 on the agreeances.
Yep.
And then we had 6 disagreeances, and you went. You beat me. You went 4-2, and I went 2-4. So, in the aggregate, you went 19-9, and I went 17-11.
And I think there wasn't an over-under. We actually just missed one. We didn't realize that or 2 teams were missing, and we didn't realize this.
Yeah, the 2008-2009 seasons for Detroit and Denver never happened as far as we were concerned.
We didn't realize that they weren't on the list. Now we're a little more prepared. So what we're going to do is, every year Las Vegas puts out, and they usually do this about 2 weeks before the season, they put out over-unders for the win totals for every team. And it's always by a half point. So, for instance, the Knicks are 35.5. And you have to bet over or under what their win total is going to be. And what happens is they put the lines out, and then people bet them one way or the other. And eventually they have odds. So, if, for instance, a lot of people love the Knicks at plus 35, over 35.5, they'll skew it so that you have to bet 150 to win 100 or something like that. So we're going to try to avoid talking about the money odds unless they're really egregious for the most part. This year, a little bit of a different wrinkle. We're going to start with the team that has the lowest over-under and then gradually work our way up until we hit the team with the highest over-under. You can probably guess who that team's going to be, but I won't spoil it for you. House, first team on the list. I'm very excited to talk about them this early. The Timberwolves of Minnesota, 23.5 seems low. A little low, tiny bit low.
It does?
They've been drafting in the top 5 for 10 years.
So?
I'm not saying I'd bet it. I'm just saying
they got rid of their best player for nothing.
Beasley's looked good in the preseason. Here's the thing.
Did you just say Michael Beasley looked good?
He's been putting up stats. Granted, he'll be putting up stats in a prison league in 2 years, but here's the thing with Minnesota. They ran the wrong offense last year, and they had the wrong players. We can all agree on that. They were running a triangle, which made no sense. They had Love and Jefferson, who I still think could have coexisted in the right situation, but not with what they had. They didn't really have any swingmen who could shoot. They addressed that. They went up.
They addressed that?
Yeah, Wes Johnson. I think He could make shots. Martell Webster could make shots. Those guys are decent NBA players.
Okay, I agree with Martell Webster. Jury out on Matthews.
Center is going to be a little bit of an issue because the well-traveled Darko Milicic is going to be man in the front with some European guy, Petrovic, I think his name is. I can't remember.
I see Pekovic.
Pekovic. I'm not going to even attempt.
And Costa Kufus is
Costa. Good to have him back.
Well, I liked him in college.
Well, it just seems like it's a little more encouraging for them this year. The question is there a worse team than them? I would argue the Nets are worse.
Oh, I disagree that the Nets are worse.
Who do you think is the worst team?
I think Minnesota's the worst team.
Really? You give them the honors for the worst team?
And to me, it's not even close.
Really?
When you look at these rosters, this is the thing when we get to the Nets, which will be momentarily. The Nets went from having like 2.5 professional players to having like 7 or 8 like legit NBA guys.
Right.
I look at this Minnesota roster; they're still in that like 2.5 range of guys that legitimately belong in the NBA.
Yeah,
maybe 3.
Well, here's where you would make the case that they're going to go under. They're in a conference that I think is just better. The East has probably half the teams are below 40 wins and not that good, and they range from deep lottery to probable lottery. The West is just a better conference.
It's not even just that they're in the West; they're in the Northwest Division, which means they get kind of a double helping of Oklahoma City and Utah and Portland and Denver. I mean, it's going to be tough for them to win games in their division. Like none of those. You don't look at any of those games and say, yeah, sure, there's a 50-50. It's a toss-up that they're going to get a W there.
Right. All right, you swayed me. I'll go under just because I can't think of 3 worse teams than them, and every year at least a couple teams lose 60 games or more, and this says that they were going to lose at least 58.5 games.
Yeah, the other thing to me with Minnesota, they won 15 games last year. I don't see where the 9-game improvement is coming from.
Let me throw one thing at you. Our man Kevin Love, one of my favorites, who I may or may not have exchanged a couple of emails with over the years, says they're a lot better, and it feels so much better about this team than the last team. He's not the type of person who would say that just to say it. Like he's just like, it just feels better this year. We're running the right kind of offense, and our players are better.
Yeah, and I just
are they 9 wins better? I don't know.
I can't get over the Al Jefferson thing.
Well, and that's, we're not going to ever be able to get over that because I watched the beginning of a Lakers game. They played them in the preseason a couple nights ago, and first play of the game, they go right to him on the low post. Now, granted, he traveled, but he's somebody that Gasol wasn't going to be able to guard him one-on-one. The Lakers had to shade over and help out.
Yep.
It's a guaranteed double team. Now, a few people point out he's terrible defensively. If anybody can drag that out of him, I think Jerry Sloan can. At the very least, he's a weapon that they didn't have. Somebody who could post up in the low block. Boozer was never a low post guy. He was always a foul line jumper, kind of high post type of guy.
Yeah, we'll get to Utah much later, but, I think decent things of them. I think that they didn't miss a beat this offseason, and they really, transformed their roster. 5 or 6 guys are gone.
Well, we'll get to them. So we're going under for Minnesota. Next one up is the Nets, and I also think under. I mean, to me, they're not 14, 15 wins better, and I think it's the one team that really was ill-prepared for free agency. They gutted their team, and there's a minimum salary cap, and once it became apparent that they weren't going to get anybody big, they had to overpay guys like Outlaw and Petro, people like that. I'm just not seeing it. I'm starting to feel bad for Brook Lopez.
I actually am giving some serious consideration to the over for the Nets. It's 25.5, and like I said before, they went from having kind of 2.5 professional players to now having, to me, maybe 7, 8 players. This starting lineup.
Care to name them?
Yeah, they have Devin Harris, they have Travis Outlaw, they have Brook Lopez. Terrence Williams is who we think he is. Troy Murphy. They drafted the kid from Georgia Tech, Favors.
Yeah.
They have Anthony Morrow from Golden State. I mean, that's not a good basketball team, but Would it be stunning if they won 28 games?
No, not in the Eastern Conference. I think my counter would be that I actually watched Outlaw playing the Clippers, and I think he's one of those guys that his name, just that his name is cool, has helped him by like 38%. And then on top of that, he played in Portland. And, as I find out every year, the Portland fans are soccer moms. Whoever's on their team, they're going to defend vigorously and overhype. And I think for whatever reason, we started to think Travis Outlaw was better than he was, when he's really just a swingman who can make some threes, and that's about it. I didn't really see any other skills from him in the games I went to. I certainly wouldn't have paid $35 million for him. But that was a little weird.
Yeah. Well, I guess, the question on the over-under for us, just comes down to, because he's emblematic of how the team has transformed itself.
And how is that?
Well, a bunch of middle-in guys. They overpaid for a bunch of middle-in guys.
We didn't mention one thing, which is that Avery Johnson is the coach. And I think in this type of situation, he could be an asset because he's a drill sergeant. He's one of those, hey, good, the leaf blower guys here. I do think that he's somebody that could kind of exact the potential of a team. Like if your ceiling is 32 wins, he's going to get you there. And you'll hate him within a year, but that first year, he's gonna push you there. So that might be a case. Maybe they go to get to 28.
But the number's 25.5.
Yeah.
So my vote would be over.
I don't feel good about it either way. It's certainly not one I'd recommend. I'm gonna go over just because on the next one I want to go under with Toronto.
Okay, so
and I think also our Gardner does too. Do you? It's good. You like over for Toronto? Great. Could you stand outside the window? Fantastic. All right, so we'll go tentative over for the Nets. Toronto is 26.5. I wrote about it last week. My dad went to the game, and he emailed me like, I thought, I thought people were missing from the team, and then I realized that this was their team. It's a disaster. Like, I think other than Cleveland, you have to feel the worst for the Toronto fans, right?
Absolutely. I look at that Toronto roster, and it makes me feel the way I felt when I watched Bad Girls Club for the first time. There isn't a single redeemable character on this cast. Who am I supposed to believe is going to score for this team?
Well, who do you put on the program? Like, who's the best-selling jersey in the gift shop? Like, is it Bardani? You got to talk yourself into Bardani?
I think that's it. That's the answer.
Oh, it's just terrible. I feel so bad for them, and they have great fans too. Like I've written this before, but they're up there with Portland and the Knicks fans and the Celtics fans and there's people that just really legitimately care. This is a tragedy what's happened to them. I think they're going to get most of their enjoyment out of heckling Vince Carter and Chris Bosh the 3 times they come this year. Those are the highlights of the year.
And Haydu.
And Haydu.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so that's what. So now we're up to – he only comes once.
So that's 5?
Yeah. Well, is this our first lock?
I was just going to say, I think we're in violent agreement, and I'm prepared to call this one a lock.
All right, well, I'm going to pencil that down as a lock. We'll come back to it at the end. Yeah. Sacramento, 27.5. You and I actually talked about them on the phone today a little bit. I'm a little worried about the minutes because they have Carl Landry, they have Cousins, they have D'Alembert, they have Jason Thompson.
Jason Thompson, yeah.
So it's 4 guys for 2 spots. None of those guys can play the 3. And then you have Tariq Evans, he needs the ball. You got Bino Udre, who ideally should be the point guard, then you can move Tariq to shooting guard.
Uh-huh.
They never totally figured that situation out last year because it seems like Tariq likes to have the ball. And Paul Westphal makes me a little nervous. I don't know. I'm on the fence. Tough conference. The head case edition of Cousins, who we all love. I think we all love his potential as a double-double guy, but I do worry about some of his antics.
So they won 25 games last year,
yep.
And the number here is 27.5. And then so we're confronted. Are they 3 games better? I personally think so. I think the answer to that is yes. I would say yes to that.
My problem with this is that it looks like a better fantasy team than a real team.
Oh, that very well could be. That's a good point.
It's a team that you'd want the fantasy guys on, and if Dallenberg gets hurt for 3 weeks, then you pick up Cousins and he goes crazy.
I certainly feel that way because I have both Cousins and Landry.
There you go.
From the draft we did last night.
And when they're playing 25 minutes a game and underachieving, you're going to be upset.
Probably.
The other thing going on with them is the whole stadium issue and the fact that they might move. And
do we think that really affects the players, though?
I think it affects the fans. I think it affects everybody. It becomes this constant malaise.
I guess that's a good point because, Sacramento has really loyal fans.
Yeah.
I was really impressed. They played the Wizards last year after the Wizards debacle, and I watched it, and I was really impressed by, A, how many people were there. It was packed, and they were really into it.
It's great fans.
Great fans.
And they have been through a lot with that team.
Yep.
Arguably more than any other fan base than Phoenix the last 35 years. I mean, you could say the Knicks since 72, but at least the Knicks have had some fun teams. I don't know. Let's go under tentatively for them.
You want to? I'll agree with you on the under. I'm not going to fight for those 3 games.
Not a lock or anything.
No.
Cleveland 29.5 seems high.
I mean, it feels dramatically high.
The thing is, though, when you remove the LeBron equation, which is pretty tough to do when you talk about Cleveland, they do have professional basketball players in the team, right? Varejao.
Uh-huh.
Mo Williams.
Uh-huh.
Jamison.
Uh-huh.
I like J.J. Hickson a lot.
Okay. Anthony Parker and Jamario Moon.
Well, Anthony Parker, he better be like your 9th man. If you're.
I mean, they're starting 5 as of October the 18th, 2010, according to ESPN.com, as Mo Williams, Anthony Parker, Jamario Moon, Antoine Jamison, and Anderson Varejao. Why is that team dramatically better than the Nets?
Well, and then on top of that, you have the who's the new coach? Byron Scott. Byron Scott.
Yes.
Not somebody I love. And then on top of that, you have this is another malaise team.
Well, that's
the LeBron
thing
just hangs over them, and it's not like a Ewing theory type thing. I watched this happen with the Celtics the year after Reggie Lewis died. Not to compare Reggie's death to LeBron leaving, but it's the same thing where when you're missing somebody who was so integral to what you did, and you're just, this is a guy that was the face of the franchise and the guy you went to at the end of the game and everybody's favorite player, and then you just remove that guy. It's really tough to bounce back from that.
And the same question you asked about Toronto applies here. Who's on their program? What's the slogan in Cleveland this year?
And I also think you might see, I think Mo Williams is going to be gunning for his shots because I've read some quotes from him that I didn't like about now, I sacrificed a lot these last couple of years. Now I can be me. It's like, no, actually, we were not sure we want you to be you, Mo.
Right.
You were the when you were you on Milwaukee, they decided to trade you for 10 cents of the dollar. I'm going to go under. And
I'm
it's
under
borderline lock.
Right.
I'm not totally. I'm going to write tentative lock. Golden State, Monte Ellis, Stephen Curry, and David Lee. And if they get anything from Biedrins, mildly intriguing team. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but a fun team to go see at least.
For sure, they're going to be exciting to watch. There were 2 guys that really impressed me in the FIBA championships, Steph Curry and Eric Gordon, and I just couldn't. I was really, really impressed with Curry. I was blown away by him. He looked like a couple of times he was playing at a little bit different speed than the other guys on the floor. And, that's not chump competition. No. I mean, some of those games were, but he really impressed me.
It's the real tragedy of the David Kahn era. Like, forget all the other stuff.
Yeah.
But just, like, having 2 chances to take him and not taking him. Brandon Jennings, you can defend him on, because if he had gone 5th or 6th, I think people would have gone crazy, and I just think that would have been an absurd pick. But Stephen Curry is somebody that everybody felt like was a lock. At the very least, this guy is going to be a plus 40% three-point shooter and a guy on a good team.
And that's the single skill. I mean, we've talked about this before. If you have that skill, then you're in the league for 10 years, and you're a real value-add guy.
But he's a lot better than that, though.
He's a lot better than that.
I mean, he's a creator.
He's a very good point guard.
Yeah, I think they're going to be fun to watch. I like the new ownership. I think that kind of invigorated this whole thing. They finally got rid of the owner that everyone hated. They finally got rid of Don Nelson, who was, a dead body the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm prepared. They won 26 last year, and what we're looking at is can they win 31? I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, and also I think Lee is finally, they had the Randolph. They had all these guys, these young power forwards. They had Randolph, they had Brandon Wright, B. Adrians was in and out. I'm not sure that from a chemistry minute standpoint, that situation was even 1% good. And now it's like, David Lee's a good guy. That's a guy that all the Knicks fans loved. I think people like playing with him. I think Curry's a good guy. Monta Ellis a wild card, but you've never heard a bad. I've never heard bad Monta Ellis stories. Like he's a little selfish, but I don't think he's a bad guy. B. Adrians is a great guy. You watch him even when he's hurt. He's on the bench. They might have good chemistry this team.
Well, another good guy that they acquired this year, Louis Amundsen.
Yeah, you're right. I like the over. I think they're going to be frisky.
I like the over also. I'm not calling it a lock, but I like the over. We're in agreement. So far, we've agreed on all 6 of the teams we've looked at.
You swayed me on Minnesota. You could have talked me into the over on that one. Detroit Pistons 31.5.
I like the under very much.
Who is going to rebound the ball for this team?
I don't have an answer to that question.
Ben Wallace again. Dragged back for another year. Ed Davis, the rookie from Carolina. Do we like Ed Davis at all?
Not Joe House does not like Ed Davis.
Soft.
Their best rebounder is probably Jerebko.
And he got hurt. He's out for 6 months.
Oh, my gracious. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, he tore his Achilles.
Oh, I hate that.
A week ago or 2 weeks ago, or he tore something. Yeah, he's out for probably the whole season.
On the bright side, they have Ben Gordon and Charlie Villanueva for a combined $95 million.
Well, it's funny. Like, you read stories about both of those guys, and both of them are like, big comeback year. I got a lot to prove, and blah, blah, blah. And I worked hard. I worked really hard this offseason. It's like, why didn't you work hard last offseason when they paid you all the money?
Yeah.
You couldn't have worked hard that season? You couldn't have been in great shape that season? It really makes professional sports can be sobering sometimes. I don't really like anything about this team.
Me either. 27 wins last year. I have them down for the exact same number this year.
They might be a little worse. I mean, considering that other teams got better and it felt like they either went sideways or took a tiny step down. I'll tell you one thing, though. If I was a GM, I would be looking long and hard at Rip Hamilton.
Oh, sure.
To kind of steal because
I mean, he's got a good contract.
It's relatively inexpensive if he comes through.
What is it? It's under 10, isn't it?
It's a little higher than that. I think it's about 12.
Maybe I'm confused.
It's got, I think he has 2.5 years left because you can get out of it with you can pay him off half what it's worth in 11, 12. And also there's going to be a lockout next year. So who cares about next year? I'm surprised that a team didn't, a team like Toronto that had cap space. I would have rather played the Rip Hamilton card than go after somebody like Barbosa, personally.
Well, it'll be interesting as the season shapes up. There will be teams that need a shooting guard. You look at the rosters here. There are some teams with holes.
Yep, and expiring contracts.
Yeah, I mean Oklahoma City even. Cephalosha is great. Harden comes off the bench for them.
Well, the only thing with you get Hamilton, you gotta run him off screens and stuff. He kind of becomes part of your offense. Like I'm looking at like a team that could potentially really use him. I would have said Houston, but they got Kevin Martin. But think about the Bulls.
The Bulls is interesting. It really comes down for them out of to what they get out of Ronnie Brewer. Now they did acquire Korver.
Right, but if you did an expiring contract, something else, and Ronnie Brewer and a future number one they'll never see, and you bring in Rip Hamilton to shore up the two. A professional guy who's played in big games, who I don't think is done yet.
Yeah, I don't think he's done either.
Great three-point shooter, and he's somebody that as soon as Billups left, his career went in the tank because I think he's one of those guys that totally depends on the point guard getting him the ball in the right spot, right where he likes it, right coming off that screen, and you take that away from him, and I just don't think he's the same guy. I feel like he's one of those stocks that's
You know where we're going
right
to find
now.
him? I
Charlotte?
I'm going to bet $1 that we're going to find him in Dallas.
That would be a good one. I would support like flip him for Jason Terry.
Something like that, exactly.
Yeah, he will end up on a good team again. He reminds me of Ray Allen in that you put him in the right situation, you're getting more than what you had to pay for him.
Yeah, that's right.
That makes sense. Indiana, so we're both going under for them.
We're both going under for Detroit, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to put a tentative lock because we'll narrow it down to 7 locks, but I'm at least going to give the L for that one.
Okay.
Indiana's 34.5. Seems right. And in fact, I think they're going to finish with 34.5 wins. I'm predicting a push. They're going to have a half win.
We're going to have a tie. It's the first ever NBA tie.
It's going to be the last game of the season. There'll be a power outage, and they'll just declare it a tie because it'll be them and some other lottery team, like whatever, nobody won, and then it'll be a push.
They're a weird team to me. They're definitely one of the 3 or 4 least interesting teams to me. Like a team that I'm not that I wouldn't want to go see live.
Yep.
Other than Danny Granger, and I'm not sure like how they're all going to play together. You know, they're starting Josh McRoberts at power forward. Well, so there you go. I mean, that's kind of an answer, isn't it?
Is that true? People have been emailing me that. I thought people were like messing with me.
I'm looking at it.
He's really going to start at power forward for them?
Well, it's him or Psycho T. Those are their choices.
How many white guys do they have? Do you have the roster?
I do. I have it in front of me.
How many white guys do they have this year?
Don Levy is one.
McRoberts, Psycho T,
Hansborough, Jeff Foster.
Ooh. I always liked Jeff Foster.
That might be it.
Oh, low number this year for the Pacers.
Yeah.
They could always trade for white guys during the season, right? The best white guy available.
Can and will.
What do we make of Granger? Was he hurt last summer? Like, how do you explain him becoming the 12th man on that team? I thought he was going to be the best small forward they have. He didn't play.
He looked unhealthy. He didn't look fit to me. He looked like he was dinged.
Bad feedback about him, by the way, within the NBA circles about how he handled himself during that tournament. I think the whole he wasn't healthy thing might have been a little bit of a farce.
I would like to.
I think Coach K just didn't like him.
I think I'm prepared to say the under for them by the half. Like, I think they're going to win 34 games.
It'll be right
They won 32 last year.
The problem is, I don't want to give away too much of who we have coming up, but here are the teams in the East that could potentially finish with more than 42 losses, meaning under 500. The Nets, the Raptors, the Cavs, the Pistons, the Pacers, the Wizards, the Knicks, the Sixers, and the Charlotte Bobcats. That's 9 teams, right?
Yes.
9 of those teams have over-unders of 40 or less. So just by – now, you know, on the flip side, you have Miami and you have Boston, who are both going to have big years. And I think Orlando, those are 3 teams that will win at least 55 games.
Yeah.
So you could argue that it's all going to even out. But
well, and Chicago and Atlanta, too.
Right. But, I mean, there is 15 teams in the conference, and we have 9 teams that have over-unders of below 40, which means that we could really see a 36 and 46 team in the playoffs this year from the East.
This could be that year.
Now,
absolutely true.
Do you like Indiana more or less than Washington, the Knicks, Philly, or Charlotte?
I like them less.
I like them more than Philly.
I like them more than Philly as well.
I like the Wizards a little more. I love the Knicks much more.
Knicks.
I love the Knicks by like 9 wins more.
We're going to have a lock on the Knicks.
Yeah, I think we are. All right, let's go under for them.
Under for just by that half game.
Yeah. You know what? We're going to lose that one probably, whatever we choose. So let's move on.
Okay.
Your Wizards.
Yeah.
34.5. Let's hear the scouting report.
34.5. I don't really have a very good scouting report at this stage because, you know, the lineups have been appropriate for the preseason, which is lots of shuffling of combos, lots of in and outs. I think the best team, the best 5 on the floor, is going to be the 3-guard, the 3-headed monster.
Playing Gilbert at small forward almost?
Yeah, well, something like that. I mean, he can't defend the small forward, but, you know, he
play his zone.
Well, and that's exactly what they'll do. And then with, like, Blatch and Yee, that's kind of their best 5. And then McGee Well, look, and then McGee is...
Did you just put the chairman in your best five?
I don't know what to tell you. He looks like a professional basketball player to me.
Oh, my God, House. It's the preseason. That's why he looks like a professional basketball player.
I got it. I understand. I've been warned that he disappears. So.
You've heard that rumor?
I've been warned. But look, it's the time for irrational exuberance, and that's the way I'm feeling about the Wiz right now. I mean, I'm not ready to put a pin in the balloon just yet. Wall is a transcendent athlete. I mean, he is super fast. I think you got to see a little bit of him and Brandon Jennings.
I've watched three pieces of your preseason games, and
yeah.
he is a breathtaking defender. And that's the thing that I think separates him. I'm not sure offensively if he's going to get there in the next 2 years, but defensively right now, and he might. I'm not saying he's the best. Like, we need you to go and stop that guy from scoring with 20 seconds left in the game, and you need to get a stop here on Kobe Bryant. I'm just talking about like jumping passing lanes.
That's it. In the flow. He's an unbelievable in the flow guy, and he's going to score a lot of his points that way. He's going to get a lot of those, fast break transition baskets just because people can't keep up with him.
Yeah,
he's going to get square to him.
He's going to get a ton of layups and dunks, and
he's also going to get to the free throw line.
Yeah, we're going to look at the advanced metrics, and he's going to have like a ton of his points will be within like 3 feet because he's just sneaky. I really like watching him, and I can't wait to see him in person because you can even see it on TV. He's somebody he's one of those guys who's up to stuff. And Pippen was like this.
His build is perfect for getting inside of guys. He doesn't have like huge shoulders. He's not a great big upper body, upper torso guy, so he's not banging into guys squarely. He's inside of them. He's always got his shoulder inside somebody.
Pippen was like it.
To the free throw line.
Ben Wallace was like this. I think Bird never got enough credit for being like this during his peak when he was could really move around before his heels started to go. These certain guys, you put them on a basketball court, and they're like cats. They're just kind of creeping around, waiting to jump a lane, waiting to come from behind and pickpocket somebody, waiting to come blindside and block. And I think that's what's going to make him special. I'm not sure if he's, what do you think of his jump shot?
Work in progress.
It might be a Rondo thing where it just never actually happens.
He looks a little better. His stroke looks a little better than Rondo.
Does look better.
But,
Actually, Rondo's a really good comparison because I think statistically, I think that's the kind of – I don't know if he'll rebound quite as well.
No, I don't think he will either.
I think he'll get more steals than Rondo did, and Rondo led the league in steals.
Yeah, that's right.
I really think he could get 3 steals a game.
John Wall, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I also think, and you know this, you live in the Chocolate City. Have you ever had a wizard that is going to potentially resonate with the city like this guy?
Not since Gilbert Arenas. I mean, Gilbert Arenas had the city by the pants until he got hurt.
I think this guy has a higher upside than Gilbert for that.
It depends on the success of the team. I mean, if the team kind of climbs on his back, or if it looks like it, and they end up being 10 games better than last year, it really could turn out that way. There's a lot of question marks around this Washington team. In fact, so many I'm not positive that I'm ready to say that they're 9 games better. I mean, like I said, irrational exuberance at this point in the season, but are they really going to be 9 games better than last year? Are they going to win 35?
Yeah, because they didn't have Gilbert for most of those games, and they have John Wall. Heinrich is better than any guard you had last year, right?
Yes.
And when does Josh Howard come back?
I don't want to make I will make a joke. Never. I don't know. Does it matter?
I think it matters. He's an 8-man rotation guy.
Yeah, but back from ACL in hoops. I don't love it. Not the first season back,
I like the over. And I'm also going to say there's something cool about John Wall.
For sure.
He's I wouldn't call him charismatic, but there's something about him that you kind of don't take your eye off him. And I think I've written this before, but I think he's going to eventually have really cool facial hair.
He arrived with a dance. How many rookies arrive with the dance that other people like to do?
One of the coolest NBA players we've seen. Just like there's a little, and Iverson had this as a rookie when you went to his games, and there was just something about the way he carried himself that you couldn't take your eye off of.
Yep.
And I think Wall is going to be like that.
Okay, good. We're in agreement. Over.
Over. Knicks, over. Do we even... this
Let's
to me
just
is the
call it a
biggest
lock
layup.
now. Let's call it a lock. Agree, over, lock.
Amari's going to have a
down.
huge year. I think Amari's going to have a huge year.
I think that.
Felton, I think, is much better than anybody they had running the show last year.
It's not much of a stretch. The answer is yes.
Gallinari.
Duhan and Tony Douglas, huh?
Yeah, they had the worst point guards in the league other than maybe Minnesota last year. Now they have somebody who's mediocre.
Is Azabwikwe still hurt?
Coming back soon. I'll tell you who's going to help them, and somebody that is going to be a gigantic hit with the New York fans. Can you guess where I'm going?
Roger Mason?
No. Although I did like that signing. I thought that was sneaky.
Yeah, it was smart. I don't want to keep making guesses. Go ahead.
Ronnie Turieff.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I think the Knicks fans are going to love him. He plays with heart. He's one of those guys that he feeds off the home crowds. He was great in Golden State. He really, I thought he was somebody that I was actually kind of hoping the Celtics might get last year when we were looking at, when they were talking about maybe they trade for 6 more fouls or whatever they were going to do. But I don't know.
He also has some discernible skills. I mean, he plays the center position appropriately. He's not, a top of the world athlete, but he plays it appropriately. He plays the angles right.
Great chemistry guy.
And I think, that's precisely the thing that's going to propel them to, upwards of like 41 games or so. That team is just sort of built for chemistry. And they're built for D'Antoni, and they're built for rejuvenating the Garden. I just think it's going to be a very fun team to watch this year.
And there's one other factor you got to throw in.
Go ahead.
The Knicks fans have had 9 miserable years where really nothing to grasp onto. And I went to a game last year that I was staggered by. I mean, that I couldn't believe how invested the fans were in the game when it was this meaningless game against Atlanta. Even if the team is decent and entertaining, and that's it.
Yeah.
The Knicks fans are going to totally overreact to that. I would compare it to this. A guy who hasn't had a girlfriend in like 4 years, and he's finally having sex with somebody. And he's like, my God, this sex is amazing. It's the best sex. And really, he just hasn't had sex.
Yeah.
That's what the Knicks fans are going to be like this year. I think they're going to be so invested in every game. Amari is going to feed off them. He's going to love playing there. He's one of the few guys that I think, I thought Joe Johnson would have been a disaster there.
I agree.
Because he's not a superstar, nor does he carry himself like one. I think the pressure might have gotten to him a little bit. Amari's the opposite. He wants the pressure. He wants the spotlight. I think he's going to be somebody that immediately has a major impact with the fans. I think they're just going to like him.
Yeah, I think the fans are really these guys are really going to resonate with the fans all season long. I was with you at that Atlanta game.
Yep.
And that team, talking about teams with professional players, that team had like 1.5 professional player.
Yeah.
And really, the Garden willed them to a victory over the Hawks.
It's a great fan base, and we haven't even talked about the number one reason why this is a lock. Carmelo Anthony is going to be on the Knicks.
Oh, wow.
This is the worst kept secret in the league right now.
So
He's
what's
going to
the
be
deal?
a Knick. I look forward to seeing this as a transcript on some Knicks blog. He's
do
going
it
to be a
quick.
Knick.
Let's hear the rundown.
He wants to play in the Knicks.
I got it, but
who's
leaving New York?
He's rooster blocking every other potential trade. He's making it clear to everybody, I want to be in the Knicks, and if you trade for me, unless you were the Chicago Bulls, because that's the one team I would go to, I am not signing an extension with you. So you're going to trade all these assets for me, and then this summer I'm going to sign with somebody else, so don't do it. It's stupid. That's the message that's going out to all these teams. He wants to play for the Knicks. His wife wants to be in New York. She has this VH1 show, La La, Get Married, or whatever the hell it's called. Have you seen that show?
What show?
His fiance, now wife, had a VH1 show about the planning of the wedding. Like, she's a personality.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she wants to live in New York or L.A., and they don't want to play for the Clippers because they don't want to play for Sterling. They have no shot at playing with the Lakers, so it's going to be the Knicks. And so here's the trade. By December 15th, you can trade free agents that you've signed.
Right.
Or, it's just a little more flexible.
Yep.
Which allows them to include Ray Felton if they wanted to. And I'm not sure if they're going to do that. But They could get this trade done now with Gallinari, all the expiring contracts they have, which is like Curry, Azubike.
Curry is the one that really does it, doesn't it?
Curry, Azubike, Ronnie Turioff. They could throw in Roger Mason, which is why the December 15th thing is big, because that's more money you can throw in, and Wilson Chandler, and you get back Carmelo and Kenyon Martin. Because Denver has made it clear you have to take back at least one of our head cases in this trade. So,
J.R. Smith or Kenyon being the choices?
Yeah, or both. Please take both. But if you don't want both, at least take one of them back.
Wow, imagine those guys in New York.
And then throw in a 2014 number one. Now, what supposedly the Knicks, they don't want to give up Gallinari, and they're trying to have Randolph be the guy.
That's a fair way to play it.
Yeah. So if this gets to the mid-December and Carmelo just has put the stink out, don't trade for me, then if you're Denver, you don't want to end up like Toronto did.
So look, from where we sit here today, how much of a metaphysical certitude do you think this trade, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being an absolute certainty like the sun coming up in the east tomorrow, what are you giving that?
I would say 90% that Carmelo is either a Knick or a Nugget in March.
Well, he already is a Nugget.
I know, but the other option is they just say, screw you, we're not trading you, and you have no chance of getting your $65 million. Because this is all about the $65 million.
Yeah,
if he gets traded now, he gets an extension, he gets to avoid whatever the new CBA is.
It's why I asked you that question that way. To me, the thing that makes the most sense is for him to just stay in Denver and to sign that extension, and you always just take the dollar. Take the dollar. There's no certainty about anything in life.
Well,
there's a dollar in front of you. Take the dollar.
His wife apparently does not want to be in Denver anymore. So what do you do under that? His wife wants to be in New York or L.A. so she could be a media star.
We're going to have it's another Janet Jones.
I think this will come down to if the Knicks put Gallinari on the table, it's done. And what's funny is the Knicks fans who have been so desperate for star players are now like holding the line on Gallinari like he's a deal breaker.
I kind of understand it.
Yeah, no, it's just they're at least in a position of they have somebody that they care about enough. I agree.
The thing is, maybe for all the reasons we've been talking about already, this New York Knicks team may be so appealing that everybody gets really invested and psyched about them, and they're like, forget it. They'll make an irrational decision about Carmelo, or they'll the price will change, the leverage will change, because maybe the Knicks rip off a bunch of wins at the beginning of the season.
Maybe. I mean, if they can figure this out. So if you did the trade if you had the trade with Randolph, Chandler, and all the expirings for Martin, I worked this out. It came out to Martin and Carmelo are worth $33 million. Mm-hmm. That's what they make this year. So the Knicks have to get within like $25 million of contracts, which they can do. It's a little easier. Gallinari makes more than Randolph, but they could do it with Randolph once you throw in the Roger Mason contract. So if they also put $3 million in the deal and a future number one, and you get Chandler, who's he's a NBA rotation player. You get Randolph, who's somebody that you can roll the dice with. You get a pick, and the big thing, they'd save $19 million, the Nuggets, because they'd be shipping out 33, getting back 25. So they save 8. They save another 8 with the luxury tax. Then another $3 million that they get in the trade. It's a $19 million swing for somebody that's probably going to leave anyway.
And you sort of leave as a secondary matter who your team is and what you're selling to your fans. Is that
well? Then the next move is you have to trade Chauncey.
Yeah, I get all that, but then what you have is an empty shell of a team that barely resembles teams that won near 50 games, over 50 games the last handful of years, have been to the playoffs, has gone had a little bit of success in the playoffs.
Which is why I I put Denver in the 90% because there's a chance they're going to look at this and say, you know what, we'll just keep him. And the only way you're getting that $65 million is from us. The other issue here with Denver is that everybody's already paid for their season tickets. It sounds kind of callous, but whatever they do with Carmelo now, you're stuck. You already paid.
Yeah, I'm really thinking about next year. I'm really thinking about next year.
Well, then they could say this summer we're going to use that cap space and sign a whole bunch of people. We're going to be one of the only teams that has a ton of cap space.
Well, that's the thing, right? So who are they going to sign?
Listen, I'm not saying it makes sense. I'm just saying that would be their argument.
All right. We got way off here. We were on the Knicks. We agreed on the lock of the year was the over.
All right. Well, the Carmelo thing's important. It
is important, and we'll have another chance to touch on it because that Denver team is in a really interesting swing spot on this over-under chart.
And we're going under on them. Philly is also 35.5.
I really love the under.
Me too.
Should we talk about it?
Well, Evan Turner looks like a potential bust here.
And so their starting five is Drew Holiday, Andre Iguodala, Thaddeus Young, Elton Brand, and Spencer Hawes.
Oh, yeah.
Now, they have Maurice Spates on the bench. They have Nocioni on the bench. They have Lou Williams on the bench.
Yeah.
Turner is on the team. Maurice, did I say Maurice Spates already?
Bad Turner stories about him in practice.
It's a classic. You never can tell.
This is something that apparently he also did at Ohio State when he was there as a freshman. He was just, from a personality standpoint, an F-, and the way he interacted with the team, and it eventually came around. And maybe this is just a recycling of that experience. But whatever the case, I don't think he's going to help them the way a number 2 pick should this season.
So we're agreeing. Holy cow, this is crazy. What does Vegas see about in Philly? Is it a healthy Elton Brand? Vegas, Philly won 27 games last year, and Vegas has them at 35.5.
Well, I think people think Evan Turner is going to have a big impact, and I beg to differ.
Do we differ enough to call it a lock?
I'm going to put a tentative lock on that one.
Okay.
L.A. Clippers, 36.5. I got to go over. I'm sorry.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
Well,
in fact, guaranteed over.
Guaranteed
over. You don't have to lock it with me. Yeah, because I've
from
watched
the sports guy.
I've watched Blake Griffin play during the preseason, and the guy is one of the top 25 players in the league.
But don't you, in your calculus, and as you approach this team and think about their chemistry, the way they're built, don't you have to allow?
They're going to have great chemistry.
No, I'm saying, don't you have to allow some percentage of how you approach your analysis of this team has to contemplate that he might not play 82 games. He may only play 65 games. He may only play 70 games. He may only play 50 games.
And this is an important point because he's not brittle. It's not a situation.
No,
he's not like a Vince Carter. It's not like somebody who's just going to keep breaking down like a lemon of a car. It's the way he plays that makes him dangerous. He plays like a freaking maniac.
So we've talked about this offline.
He's insane, and you watch him, and you're like, you really think he's going to break his neck.
He plays
20 times a
basketball
game.
like he's playing football. He throws his body around like it's a football field.
He plays basketball like if he loses the game, he's going to be sent to Siberia, which is great. That's the quality you want in your NBA guy, but you got to pick your spots, and you got to realize, like, maybe I shouldn't go for this alley-oop in traffic, and maybe I shouldn't try to jump over this guy's back to block the shot. And these are things, like, I guess he's just not conditioned to do.
He hasn't demonstrated any inclination, proclivity whatsoever to tone it down. It's a very lovable characteristic. It's awesome to watch. He's a terrific athlete. He's a sick athlete.
He's one of the most exciting athletes I've ever seen on a basketball court, and which is weird because when I watched him in college, I didn't feel like he was this athletic. Maybe his coaches just maybe they tamed it, or he was definitely like flew around, but I didn't feel like it was like this.
Well, you also, stumbled into foul trouble quite a bit at the college level because the
maybe
kids
that's why
physically couldn't, keep up, and the refs just, pinged them for nonsense stuff.
Actually, that's a good point. Maybe because of the 5 fouls, maybe he didn't play this recklessly because he was a little, in the back of his head, he didn't want to pick up cheapies, but now he doesn't care. And I am worried he's going to get hurt, but you know what? Maybe.
How many games do you think he needs to play for them to win the 37?
Well, you mentioned Gordon before. I think he's going to be a borderline all-star this year. I don't think he'll make it, but I think he's on now the short list of really good two guards.
I mean, it's a very well-conceived team, which is a weird thing to say about the Clippers.
I know, good
because
bench.
Eric Bledsoe is terrific. I really like him.
I don't know how much he's going to help this year, but
Is
I
that
do
right?
like him. I mean, I think Foy's going to get a lot of those minutes.
I was going to. That's what I'm asking. Right? You've seen Bledsoe. I haven't seen him. I really liked him in college.
Might be a year away.
Oh, okay. But still, there are a bunch of professionals on this team. Craig Smith is a professional. Ryan Gomez is a professional.
Yep.
Yes, I mispronounced his name. Randy Foy, I hated him in Washington, but he's a professional.
He was hurt.
Yeah.
Rasul Butler, who is one of my least favorite players in a while, but is still somebody that he could be your ninth man and not destroy your team. The biggest thing they're going to have going is the Kamen Griffin combo because those guys crash the boards. And listen, I don't want to watch preseason games. Like, these guys barely try in these games, and it's not that interesting to me. I'll watch to see, is John Wall, how does he look? I want to see Evan Turner. I found myself repeatedly sucked into these Clipper games because Griffin and Kamen together were playing so hard.
Yeah.
You kind of got caught up in it.
Well, it's probably the case. I haven't seen this, but I imagine that Griffin is so complementary to Kamen in the sense that Kamen can really just focus on a couple things. He doesn't have to think about, a whole variety of where he's supposed to be and contributions he's supposed to be making.
They
Griffin
brutalize the boards. You should see the ball goes on the rim, and both of those guys are going after it, and they're relentless.
The Clips should be a leading rebounding team in the league.
Yes.
Because Craig Smith is a banger.
And the other thing is, and I wrote about this last week, Barron's a front runner.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's no question about it. He's, depending on the situation, or the situation determines how he is.
Yeah.
So if the situation is good and Griffin doesn't, end up breaking his leg or doing something dumb and Kamen stays healthy and Gordon turns into what I think he should turn into if Barron doesn't freeze him out, which he did last year, I think Barron will rise to the occasion.
So we're going to agree on the over.
It's not a lock, though, because
Right.
it's a Blake Griffin bet. And
Yep.
if he can play 65 or more games, they will be a 500 team or better.
Yep. Okay.
Next one. Memphis. 38.5.
I like the over by a half. I like them winning 39 games this
How
year.
are they different from last year? Xavier Henry?
To me, they're really not. And last year they won 40 games. So that's why I'm prepared for them to win 39 this year. I think the Gay signing was, a reach.
Well, here's my only issue with them, because we both agree that Golden State's going to go over. Sacramento is probably going to be a tiny bit worse. I think the Clippers are going to be better. So who else takes a step back in the West? I think New Orleans we both have going backwards, and Denver.
Yeah, New Orleans and Denver, and we will get to them eventually. I don't like what's going on in Portland. I know you.
Oh, the soccer moms are going to come after you. You watch out, Joe House.
Well, you got crushed last year because you went out.
I got crushed last week because I dared to question the Wesley Matthews signing. Because I haven't seen their preseason games, which, by the way, are not televised in Los Angeles. They haven't been on once. How was I going to see their preseason games?
That Brandon Roy hates playing with Andre Miller. Why do I keep reading that?
I'll tell you one thing. The Portland fans so passionately and convincingly defended the Wesley Matthews signing and how great he's been in the preseason, and he's going to play. He can play three positions, and he can play with Brandon Roy, and they're going to play Roy and Matthews together because Roy can really be the pseudo point guard anyway. The offense runs through him, and he makes threes. He's a great defender, and he plays hard, and everybody agrees that he's been the best Blazer in preseason. They actually swayed me. If you remember last night at our auction draft, I bid $1 for him.
You did. That's the vote of confidence.
Early. And everybody was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, just wait. I'm going to trust the soccer moms on this one. I think when they're this passionate, and they've been passionate to various degrees, like they'll go crazy about they bonkers about Rudy Fernandez, and I thought they totally overrated him because that guy's never played an ounce of defense in his life. They overrated Odin. Every time he had a good game, they'd go crazy. In this case, it really seems like it's legitimate, and I do trust them, and they do know basketball, and if they were this passionate about it, I believe them.
Well, we're not on Portland yet.
I know. Well, I'm going back to Memphis.
Yeah, and because we're trying to find teams that might have a little drop.
All right, I'm going to go with you on over. It seems like they're in the 39 to 41 range, this Memphis team.
That's it. I mean, I think it's an over by a half, and that's all.
Not a lock, though.
No.
Charlotte's 39.5. To me, they're worse.
I think they're worse as well.
And you pointed out, I think you pointed out, they're 31-10 at home last year.
I did point that out. I was watching the previews on NBA TV, the team previews, which are terrific, and I was just floored by that. 31-10 at home, which meant that they had a horrendous road record. And the statistics about like their offensive and defensive performance on the road versus at home was really stark. Captain Jack, he really arrived and carried them to the playoffs last year. It was really his addition that put them over the top. I don't like what they did in the off season, with one except. Well, Ty Thomas wasn't in the off season. I think he's going to be awesome. I think he's going to be really good, but I think it's going to come all at the expense of Boris Diaw, who I think is going
Boris
to be.
Diaw.
I like to.
You're an NBA expert?
I got a bunch of names messed up here. Oh,
yeah. Listen, I'm not one to talk.
Easy mispronunciation.
Yeah, I'm not one to talk.
Yeah.
Well, you know what made me nervous about him? They tried to trade his ass, Boris Diaw.
Yeah, with good reason. He's like the least motivated.
The trade was done, though. It was finished, and then Jordan pulled out of it.
Yeah, with Toronto, right, for Calderon.
It was a three-teamer. I have a couple issues with this team, and by the way, I think this is a lock under.
A lock under. Okay.
I just think they're going to stink. Unfortunately, I've seen DJ Augustine play basketball. He's not good. He's just not a good NBA point guard.
So here's the thing, and you really can't look at anything other than what we've observed over the years with Larry Brown. Would Larry Brown agree to come back and coach the team because he had options in front of him, knowing that DJ Augustine was the point guard, if he didn't have confidence in DJ?
That's my biggest fear with this team, is that you have checkout guys on this team. Steven Jackson, bad situation, checks out.
Yep.
Larry Brown, bad situation, checks out.
Okay.
Boris Diaw, bad situation, starts eating. Ty Thomas, bad situation, selfish, goes for his stats. Nobody liked him in Chicago.
Well, and the thing with this team that's just insane, look at the centers. Nazim Muhammad, Kwame Brown, and
the son of Diop.
Yeah, Diop.
Mohamed Diop and Kwame Brown. I'm surprised these guys aren't on Mark Cuban's team.
That's not nice.
Oh, come on. I thought that was a fair joke. I'm going under, and I think it's a lock. I just think they're going to suck.
I'm not prepared to call it a lock. I like the under.
You know what? It is an easy conference for getting 40 wins. Half the conference stinks.
Yeah, and they had 41, 40. Oh, they won 44 games last year because 31-10 will do that for you.
Yeah.
How did they win 31 games at home?
I don't know. I mean, Jackson and Wallace really played hard. That's what it came down to. Those guys played their butts off.
I think Wallace is going to play hard again.
Yeah, but the other thing with that team is if either of those guys gets injured, it's a disaster.
So we're going to agree on the under. I don't want to call it a lock.
Okay. Last over-under that's below 41. The New Orleans Hornets, 40.5.
Yeah, a team in transition.
Yep. I think this is one of the toughest over-unders on the board because we don't know if Chris Paul's going to be in this team in February. Now, everyone's claiming he is, he's happy, blah, 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 but you look at their team and it's just not that good, and I don't – why would he be happy?
They're like they strike me as being good enough at their absolute best, firing on all pistons, great chemistry. They all love playing together. The fans are into it. Their ceiling feels like 48 games. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like
the very best you could hope for with this team is like 48 or 49 games.
Chris Paul, Bellinelli's their shooting guard. Well, Marcus Thornton will play shooting guard.
Yeah.
Ariza, who we both like, David West,
and
the artist formerly known as Emeka Okafor.
I mean, it's not horrendous.
Yeah. I'm gonna.
Stojakovic, did they get anything out of Stojakovic still?
Out of respect to Chris Paul, I'm going over.
So the over for them is 41.
Yeah. And
they won 37 last year with Chris Paul out. How many games?
Collison stepped in, though, and was good.
Yeah, he was very good. So let's agree on the over, but just at 41.
A lukewarm over.
Yeah, lukewarm over.
You know what we're going to do? We're going to move this to a part 2, the NBA Over-Under podcast, me and Joe House. Check it out on iTunes or ESPN.com. This was part 1. And now, part 2, coming up.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at PodCenter at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.
That concludes another episode of the BS Report, and we leave you with this final thought. Subway Restaurants is cheering on Jared. As if losing almost 250 pounds wasn't enough, Jared has run 552 miles training for the 2010 ING New York City Marathon. He fuels his training with the low-fat Subway Club. So now, to celebrate this landmark achievement, the Subway Club is the newest $5 footlong sub. For a limited